Shalom and welcome to Biblical Hebrew Lesson 14. Today we are looking at the history of Biblical Hebrew, which spans thousands of years and reflects the linguistic and cultural changes within the Hebrew-speaking communities of ancient Israel and Judah. The language evolved in various stages, influenced by external events like invasions, exiles, and the development of religious and literary traditions. Please write these words down on your flashcards. The Afroasiatic languages, also known as Hamito-Semitic or Semito-Hamitic, are a language family of about 400 languages spoken predominantly in North Africa, the Horn of Africa, parts of Sahara, Sahel, and West Asia. Over 500 million people are native speakers of an Afroasiatic language. There is no consensus among historical linguists as to precisely where or when the common ancestor of all Afroasiatic languages, known as proto-Afroasiatic, was originally spoken. However, most agree that the Afroasiatic homeland was located somewhere in northeastern Africa, with specific proposals including the Horn of Africa, Egypt, and the Eastern Sahara. The reconstruction timelines of when Proto-Afroasiatic was spoken vary extensively, with dates ranging from 18,000 BC to 8,000 BC. Even the latest plausible dating makes Afroasiatic the oldest language family accepted by contemporary linguists. So out of Afroasiatic came Biblical Hebrew. So Proto-Semitic roots is part of the Northwest Semitic language group, which includes Phoenician, Aramaic, and Ugaritic. It evolved from Proto-Semitic, the ancestor of all Semitic languages. Hebrew developed from the Canaanite branch of the Northwest Semitic. Inscriptions such as the Giza calendar and early biblical texts like poetry in the Song of Deborah in Judges 5 suggest that Hebrew was used by early Israelite tribes. Ancient Hebrew was initially written using the Paleo-Hebrew script, a script closely related to Phoenician. This script would later evolve into the square script used in modern Hebrew. Classical or Biblical Hebrew, circa 1000 to 600 BC. This period corresponds to the time of the united monarchy under Saul, David, and Solomon, as well as the early divided kingdoms of Israel and Judah. This era is associated with many of the earliest portions of the Bible. As Hebrew became the language of administration, religion, and literature in the Israelite kingdom, it began to stabilize. Many early biblical texts, including parts of Genesis, Exodus, and the historical books, date from this time. These texts reflect a form of Hebrew known as classical or biblical Hebrew. Hebrew was written in the Paleo-Hebrew script during this period. Some of the oldest biblical manuscripts, like the Shalom inscription dated to the 8th century BC, are written in this script. Exile and post-exile Hebrew, circa 600 to 200 BC. The destruction of Jerusalem and the Babylonian exile of the Jews in 586 BC marked a significant turning point in the development of Hebrew. During this period, the Jewish elite were exposed to Aramaic, which became the lingua franca of the Persian Empire. As a result, Aramaic influenced the Hebrew language, especially in terms of vocabulary and expressions. After the exile, the form of Hebrew used in texts began to change. This period, known as Late Biblical Hebrew, is evident in post-exile books such as Ezra, Nehemiah, Chronicles, and parts of Daniel. These texts reflect increased Aramaic influence and a shift toward more simplified grammatical structures compared to earlier biblical texts. The Hebrew script also underwent a transformation during the Persian period. The Paleo-Hebrew script was gradually replaced by the Aramaic square script, which became the standard form of writing Hebrew by the end of the biblical period. This is the script still used in modern Hebrew today. Dead Sea Scrolls and the Second Temple period, circa 200 BC to 70 CE. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in the mid-20th century near Qumran, provide significant insight into the state of Hebrew during the Second Temple period. The texts reflect a wide range of Hebrew usage, from classical biblical Hebrew to late biblical Hebrew, and even include examples of the Mishnaic Hebrew, the spoken Hebrew of the time. By this time, Hebrew was no longer the everyday spoken language for most Jews, who predominantly spoke Aramaic or Greek, especially in the diaspora. However, Hebrew continued to be used in religious, literary, and scholarly contexts. Mishnaic Hebrew and the decline of spoken Hebrew, circa 200 BC to 200 CE. In the late Second Temple period and into the early centuries of the Common Era, a distinct form of Hebrew known as Mishnaic Hebrew emerged. This was the Hebrew used in the compilation of Mishnah in circa 200 CE and other rabbinic literature. Mishnaic Hebrew was more simplified and included a number of Aramaic loanwords and constructions. During this period, Hebrew ceased to be the dominant spoken language among the Jews, as Aramaic and later Greek became more common in daily life. However, Hebrew persisted as a liturgical, scholarly, and written language. Revival in modern Hebrew, late 19th century to present. Even though Hebrew was no longer spoken, it remained the language of Jewish religious texts and scholarship throughout the medieval period. This kept Hebrew alive in Jewish communities worldwide. In the late 19th century, under the influence of Zionist ideals and the work of individuals like Eliezer ben Yehuda, Hebrew was revived as a spoken language. Modern Hebrew was based on biblical and Mishnaic Hebrew, though it incorporated new words and structures to accommodate the needs of a modern society. Key features of Biblical Hebrew. Biblical Hebrew has a relatively small vocabulary compared to modern languages, with many words having multiple meanings. The vocabulary is often poetic and symbolic. It features a rich system of verb conjugation, including 3 basic tenses, past, present, and future, that are often used interchangeably depending on the context. Biblical Hebrew was written without vowels. The vowel system known today, the Tiberian vocalization, was developed by the Masoretes in the early Middle Ages. So the earliest forms of this script that you can see that we have is from the Sinai desert and represents a Canaanite dialect of the 16th century BC. The proto-Canaanites developed their letters by drawing a picture of something that began with the sound they wanted to represent, e.g. water, which they pronounced Mayim for the sound M, a fish which they pronounced Dig for D, etc. This script developed from Proto-Canaanite circa 1500 BC to Ancient Hebrew circa 950 BC to Classical Greek to Latin that we use for English today. The 2 main historical changes we see are that the letters became more abstract. Shalom, have a great day.